This is a spoiler warning. The following video will contain spoilers for Doctor Who The Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, go and watch it now, and then come back here later. It's weird to think that it's been 10 weeks since the 13th Doctor came crashing to our screens, heralding the start of a brand new era for Doctor Who. But as the 11th Doctor once said, everything's got to end sometime, otherwise nothing would ever get started. As the series finale, the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos had the job of rounding off the series as a whole, providing some sense of closure to what we've seen in the previous 9 episodes. To paraphrase another Doctor, it was the end. But had the moment been prepared for? Well, that's just it. I'm not sure it had. And overall, whilst it was an okay Doctor Who episode, I found the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos to be a pretty disappointing series finale. Due to Chibnall's decision to make the stories more standalone and therefore more accessible to newer viewers, there's not been much of a story arc in Series 11, at least not the type that we're used to. There's no tangible phrase or motif linking episodes together, with the only real thread being the dynamics between the Doctor and her new friends. Promotional material for the New Year's Day special had revealed that the Doctor, Graham, Ryan and Yaz all make it out of the finale alive, so killing one of them off was out of the question. But nevertheless, the finale needed to round off this chapter in their time together. It was an opportunity to reflect on how far they'd come over the course of this series, and perhaps hint at where they'll go from here. Of the 3 companions, it's Graham that's the main focus here, and also Ryan to some extent, which is fair enough. This series has very much been their story, right from the opening sequence of Graham, Grace and Ryan up on the moors, to Grace's death, which set in motion their travels with the Doctor, and has cast a shadow over the stories since. I think their relationship is the one that's developed the most, with moments like Ryan calling Graham Grandad in last week's episode, and the fist bump in this one, feeling earned because of how subtly they were set up earlier in the series. I also really liked how they worked together to seal Tim Shaw in a stasis chamber, putting their past and their differences behind them. It's what Grace would have wanted. But one thing that didn't quite feel earned to me, however, was Graham's urge to kill Tim Shaw. Given that Graham has often acted as the voice of reason in previous episodes, it felt jarringly out of character for him to be so hell-bent on killing someone. Even though he apparently vowed to kill Tim Shaw if he ever saw him again, there's nothing in any of the previous episodes to suggest this. Don't get me wrong, I think the dramatic possibilities here are interesting, especially the conflict between Graham and the Doctor, which I wish had been developed further. However, ultimately it's an aspect of the story that just fell flat for me. It would have made all the difference if we'd seen Graham vow to kill Tim Shaw earlier in the series, just one line of dialogue to plant the seed. Instead, this moment ends up coming out of nowhere. Another problem I have with this aspect of the episode is how Tim Shaw is presented as killing Grace. And you'll have caught wind of this if you've seen my polls on Twitter and in the YouTube community tab. Grace's death at the start of the series is a complex one, because there's no one root cause. Is it the energy core that kills her? Or is it her fault for climbing up the crane in the first place? How about Graham? He turned on the electricity supply. There are so many possibilities here, because it's so ambiguous, but the show only really scratches the surface. Instead, Grace's death is attributed to Tim Shaw, because it's the easy option. Of course, there is an argument to be made that he is to blame for Grace's death, but whether or not he actually killed her, like he killed his other victims, is a completely different matter. Personally, I don't see how it can be said that Tim Shaw killed Grace, given that the 2 characters were only on screen together for a couple of scenes, and Grace's fall from the crane came after Tim Shaw had teleported away, after he'd left the episode. That means he didn't even know she'd died. He probably didn't even know who she was. I think the moral implications of Grace's death could have been explored much, much further. It's a shame, because Chibnall did this so effectively in Broadchurch, but here things are more black and white, good and evil. I must say, I do commend Chibnall for coming up with an original villain to bookend the series. And in fairness, I think Tim Shaw is a good villain. He looks intimidating with that face full of teeth, as well as the ceremonial robes he wears in this episode, with the darkened lighting and disconcerting camera angles helping to give him quite a sinister quality. Samuel Oatley also deserves credit for his wonderful performance. In every scene he's in, Tim Shaw has a real presence. It would have been nice to see him do a bit more in this episode. Essentially all he does is talk to the Doctor a bit and then walk off, before getting really easily defeated by Graham and Ryan. I also think they missed a trick by not dropping more references to the Stenza in other episodes of the series. Beyond the opener, they've only been mentioned in the Ghost Monument, and that's a whole 8 weeks before the finale even aired. A few other references in more recent episodes would have helped build the Stenza up as a proper threat, keeping them in the back of the audience's mind ahead of the finale. There were lots of interesting ideas in this episode that I felt to be underdeveloped, partly due to the limited 50-minute runtime. Most notably, the Ux were a really interesting concept for an alien race, but with so much else going on, they remained in the background for much of the story, only coming into the limelight towards the climax. I think really they could have done with their own episode. If they'd been established in a previous episode at least, there would have been more time in the finale to develop them further. Whilst I like Mark Addy as an actor, and I was looking forward to seeing him in this episode, his character Paltraki didn't really have much to do at all, apart from spouting out exposition when the plot needed him to. It's a shame, because the notion of a character who has lost their memory is a really interesting one, and if the episode had had more time to breathe, the implications of this could have been explored a lot further. It would also have been really awesome to see more of the planet's effects on the Doctor and her friends, especially when the Doctor and Yaz removed their neural blockers for a few minutes. This moment was just glossed over completely, with no interesting side effects or consequences. I think a planet that can mess with your minds is a really cool concept. Imagine if its influence on the Doctor and her friends had led to them turning on each other. In a way, I think a more psychological finale could have worked better for this series, as it's focused so much on the 4 regulars and their relationships with each other. Imagine if these relationships had been tested further. But alas, it was not to be. Overall, despite some good character moments and excellent special effects, in every other regard, the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos was a pretty underwhelming finale for me. The lack of setup throughout the series meant there was very little to resolve, with only Graham and Ryan's relationship achieving a true sense of finality. It's an episode full of interesting ideas, but unfortunately quite a few of these ideas either contradict how characters were presented in previous episodes, or aren't developed as much as they could be in this episode. Despite the stakes being higher than they've been all series, I just don't think this finale felt very final, and I'm hoping the appropriately titled New Year's Day special, Resolution, will provide a more fitting conclusion to the 13th Doctor's first full run of episodes. And before I draw this video to a close, here are some random thoughts about the episode that I couldn't fit into my main review. Is the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos really that bad a name? Okay, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but hey, it could be worse. A lot worse. One of my favourite moments from the finale is a 360 shot that follows the Doctor as she moves all the way around the TARDIS console, masterfully achieved by Jamie Charles. I thought Jodie gave another strong performance in this episode, though I'm a bit disappointed that she didn't get a bigger speech or Doctor-defining moment. Having said that, the mini speech that she gave at the end of the episode was really nice. I like how this episode, and this series, ended on an optimistic note. It reminded me of how each series of the Sarah Jane adventures would end, with the team all together, smiling, about to go on another adventure. Whew, so, that does it for this review and for my series of Series 11 reviews. Thank you very much for watching over the course of these past 10 weeks. I'd love to know what you thought of the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos, and also the series as a whole, so please do post your thoughts and mini reviews in the comments section below. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the new year to review Resolution.